definitely, I think empathy is something that you need to have in order to be able to write characters, because you need to empathize with the characters you don't like in that moment as well. There were so many moments I did not like Sana. I was like, I don't like you right now. Something terrible happened to you, but that doesn't justify you doing the things that you're doing right now, feeling the way that you're feeling right now. But I have to have that empathy for her to know that she can't help it. And sometimes we can't, like, sometimes we're not consciously in charge of everything that we're saying and doing. Sometimes our emotions take over, and maybe that isn't right, but it's just the way that it is.
Hey peeps, welcome to the Literary Lounge, where we have honest conversations with authors about life, literature, and the spaces in between. The author I have with me here today needs no introduction. An Instagram sensation with the debut novel that has already won the hearts of many, Nona Uppal is a star in the making, a professional marketer in the day, and I'd like to stay awake at night to finish this book reader. Nona is not only famous for her writing, but also her fabulous book recommendations, many of which are now happily added to my TBR. So I'm really glad to have you here finally, Nona, to finally be speaking to you about your book, Fool Me Twice, Your Life as a Published Author, and everything in between. Thank you so much for being here. And how are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Your background is so picturesque and it's kind of like really lighting up my Saturday afternoon. I'm doing really well. I had a great sleep last night, which, despite the schedule of the last month, has been something that has been easy to come by. I think the great benefit of being slightly busy is that sleep is amazing. You fall asleep in a second. But I've been great. I've been happy, overwhelmed, a little tired, but just really enjoying the process of like being in the second phase of the book writing process.
That's amazing. I've been following your stories actively, and I see that how busy you are. Your schedule looks so busy. I don't even know how you manage all of those, and along with your full-time job, it's amazing to see all of that. And I also saw that recently you finished this book called One Day, and I would love to know what you're reading currently.
I
What's up?
am. I'm currently reading Funny Story by Emily Henry. It's literally sitting on my bed right now. I received an advanced copy from Penguin, and that's, oh my god, it's like I can't stop reading it. It's coming out in April, so that's what I'm literally reading right now. And after that, I have a bunch of books lined up that I really want to finish. I think this weekend is going to be my content consumption weekend, so I will update on my stories, what I'm reading next. But currently, Funny Story is really taking up all of my time. And
How are
happily,
you liking it?
I'm really liking it. I think there's something so I certainly have thoughts which I will share once the book is out, because that makes a lot more sense. But I think it's something so nice about having an author whose work you'll read without even questioning it. And it's just like a no-brainer read for me. Like if she writes it, I'm gonna read it. So I'm enjoying it thoroughly.
I read her last book. I haven't read a lot of her works. I read Happy Place, and I was uh, it is such a beautiful book. I mean, I read parts of it. I still go back to it sometimes because the lines are written so beautifully. The writing is so beautiful in general, and the story, of course. So I'm really anticipating this book of hers, Funny Story. And once it's
Love
out,
it. Happy Place is one of my is actually I think my favorite Emily Henry. So if you like that, I think that's we're very aligned on how we read.
and the other author that I always go to is Taylor Jenkins Reid. She hasn't like picked up another novel yet. I mean, there's nothing out from her yet, but I'm really anticipating what she's writing next.
It's because
Uh,
she's so busy with all the adaptations, everything that she's
yes,
doing coming into a film or a show. I love, by the way, have you read Daisy Jones? I'm sure you have.
yes, yes.
Have you seen the show?
Yes. Oh
Oh,
my God.
oh
That's
my
so
God.
amazing.
I don't know how I lived life before that show existed in my world. I can't. It's been months since I watched it and I can't get over it. It's
I
just
know.
consumed a part of my brain and it always will have that part. But yeah, what a show.
Absolutely. I mean, I watched the show, I read the book, and so I have this thing that whenever I know that a show is coming out, I would generally prefer reading the book first, and then I would watch the show. But this time the opposite happened. I had watched the show first, and then I read the book, and I was thoroughly amazed at everything, the show, the book. And the kind of writing also, I mean, it's amazing how she thinks so far. She created a band overall, and then and the
You know,
songs also.
to me, it doesn't sound possible that this didn't exist. Like it's so real in my mind, these
Exactly.
characters. I can't stomach the fact that this didn't happen. And that's an art of like masterful storytelling. Like take a bow. It's so good. Like I'm swept away as a writer. I hope to do that someday with something that I write to make people feel like it couldn't have not happened.
Exactly.
So good.
Yeah, so I read that book and I was like, shit, how is it possible that this band does not exist? I researched for so many days after that that maybe I'm missing out on something. Maybe there's something I missed out on. But then
Yeah.
I was like, shit, bro, this does
It
not
really doesn't
exist.
exist. Yeah.
But okay, moving on to Fool Me Twice. I know that you've had a very busy schedule, and now that you're a published author, and also you are working full time, right? So how does your schedule looks like? Have things escalated ever since then?
It looks just as wild as it did before. So before I was working on the book, which is when the book was being written, and back then the schedule looked like I would work on the startup, and I would take like an early day at like 7:30, and then I would spend the rest of the night writing, and I would usually write at like a cafe near my place, and then I would wake up in the morning before I had to head to work again and write in those morning hours. So back then, which is all of 2023, the process was very like solitary, very confined to my own space, and very focused on my laptop. That's all that I did. And even back then, the schedule was very hectic. But I think because it kind of became a very predictable kind of a hectic, my brain kind of internalized it, and I was like, okay, I can do this. Now, when the book is now out and it's in its promotion scale, it's a very different kind of a hectic where weekdays aren't as hectic because I mean, of course, events largely happen on the weekends. But the weekends tend to get really, really tiring because it's a very on kind of a thing. Like I'm meeting so many people and I'm signing copies, and the physicality of it isn't tiring. But I think it's just it's funny that that part was so solitary and this part is so extroverted and so reader involved, and they're both tiring in their own ways, but they're also both so fulfilling in their own ways. Like I'm so excited to meet readers and hear them geek about what character they like and what part they were like, oh, this made me cry and stuff like that. But now, because when I was in that state, I was craving meeting readers, but now that I'm in this state, I'm craving my solitary time again. So it's very like interesting and fun, but I'm really liking it.
That's amazing. The best part is that when I met you, I've seen this in your videos also, and even when I met you, that you're so chirpy and happy about meeting readers. It's the best part about everything, about the book launches and about meeting you in person, because you're always ready to sign a book, always happy, always will greet readers with a smile. And I always wonder, and sometimes even when I see your stories, how tiring that must be by the end of the day. That when you go back home, you must be tired with all the smiling and all the uh, physicality of signing books and everything. So is that something that bothers you also?
No, it doesn't bother me. Of course, it's tiring. Like, I'm a human being. So, of course, it's tiring. And I was discussing this with my sister recently. I was just like, it's tiring because, and I'll be very honest, of course, I mean, I'm a human being, so I get exhausted. But I feel like it's such a privilege to be this exhausted about something that you worked on, so I don't take it for granted at all. But also I feel like if say 50 people have come to the event, and the 50th person is the last person that I'm having a conversation with, they have stuck out throughout the event, listened to me talk, and waited their time to have that conversation with me, and I owe it to them to give them the same energy that I gave to the first person in line. And that's my responsibility, and that's something that I would not feel happy with myself going to bed at night knowing that I didn't do that. And that's not coming from a place of a deep great obligation, or from a place of like, I have to do this. No, I owe it to them because I'm so grateful that they came. So I think that the fact that I want to give everybody that equal attention, I want to give them the equal amount of like love and affection and kind of care, that by the end of it, of course, you're spent. But it doesn't bother me at all. Like it actually, I love it because I fall asleep so easily at night, which has always been a problem for me. But it doesn't bother me. Of course, it tires me, but I would any day take this tiring over, like, say, working out in the gym. Like, this is my preferred form of getting tired.
That's so beautiful and amazing. And now I'd like to talk about your book in particular, and I'd like to start with a part that that did break me down. And when I was reading it, I was in tears. And a lot of readers I've seen on your stories as well were in tears when they were reading this part of the book. And I just read out a section before I move on to the question. You melt in front of me, and suddenly you're all around, in the air, in my hair, in my eyes, coming out as tears. I stretch my arms to try and hold you, these little bits and bobs of black floating all around me. That one could be your brain. That one, your left leg that you broke in the 10th grade. Which one is your sweet, sweet smile? And what about your strong hands? I raise my hands in the air, trying to grab what's left of you, but you keep slipping out of my grip. I'm still reading this part, and I honestly have goosebumps on my skin because it does that to you, right? So I want to ask you, how did you manage to write about grief so well? And is it an inspiration from some real life event that you experienced, or what happened?
So, grief in my life has largely, the way that I've consumed it has largely been in the form of like loss of my grandparents, which is inevitable, but no one sees it as tragic. Like, of course, you are going to lose your grandparents. You're a young person. That's a rite of passage. But in the last couple of years, I think with COVID, I saw grief in a way that I hadn't expected to see at all. I saw people my age losing parents. I saw people my age passing away. And I think all of that really kind of escalated this overall sense of doom that I have, that I carry with me, which is that we're all going to die. We're all fated to, like, leave this earth with close to no trace of our physicality. So, why even bother about anything? So I think I spent so much of my time being consumed by these thoughts that I, in my head, have already played out in vivid detail the deaths of everyone that I love, and imagine myself in those scenes and imagine what it would feel like. And I think that writing this was almost a sort of release of that fear, the intense fear that I carry with myself of potentially losing people and how it would feel in that moment. I feel like I was just writing it all into existence, hoping it doesn't happen. A fail, like a silly hope. Of course, it's going to happen. But I think when you spend so much of your time consumed by certain types of thoughts, when you replay in your mind what could happen, it almost feels like you've lived that experience. I don't know if this would be how I would react. I don't know if this would be how anyone would react, but it certainly is how my brain understands the situation. This was the part of the book that was written the first. Like, this is the oldest part of the book. It was written last year in January, and this is the part that remains largely unchanged. And it was written in a kind of like a free association, like, I don't know, just like putting it all out there kind of a vibe. And I really liked that about it. It felt like I was really experiencing these emotions in real time and just putting them out from the world. And I decided that I'm not going to edit this too much. So I think, yeah, just being consumed by these thoughts on the daily is how I kind of wrote it. And with people who've had these experiences have told me that, okay, this is how it felt exactly. So that's my gratification and validation that I was able to do service to that emotion. But yeah, that's what I would say inspired the writing process.
It's beautiful. I mean, I read it and I was in tears when I was reading it because there is this entire scene that is there before we come to this part. And I was like, and still while I was reading this out to you, I had goosebumps when I was reading it. I mean, it's a very beautiful part of the book. I loved it thoroughly. This was the section when I was like, you've outdone everything else. I mean, the characters and everything. I mean, I loved this part the most.
I'm so glad. It's such a tragic part, but that's what a lot of people are saying. And I'm just like, I'm so glad to have been able to deliver that to people.
Because if you can make readers feel that this is something, this is a way in which you'll feel grief at some point in life, I think that's it. That is the point where a writer is whole. It becomes whole, that, I've done my work.
I'm so glad that was the experience.
And I have a follow-up question to this as well. And that is that I've very often observed that men and women have different ways of expressing grief and going through different phases in life. In Fool Me Twice, we see how Sana faces the burden of loss and then moves on in life. What do you think would have been the reaction of the of Ashish if he would have been on the receiving end?
That's very interesting. I haven't thought about it, but I think for Ashish, the experience would be very different because if the story stays exactly the same and it was Sana who passes away, Ashish would have probably had like college to return back to, and he would have had like a completely different country that he would be living in and different friends and different experiences. And he would just have like a lot of external stimulus that would almost mandate it for him to kind of get over the situation, because there's a point in the book where Sana's mother is like, you can't stay caged up in here forever, you have to go out, otherwise his grief will consume you. That's exactly what she says. And I think for Sana it was a lot easier to stay consumed in the grief because she's in the city where she's spent her entire life, in the vicinity of the place where she's had her boyfriend pass away. She's friends with the same people, she's seeing the same people around. That's all that her life is. Her life largely remains unchanged, while Ashish moves away to a completely different country and has a completely different life. So I think for him, it would have been very significantly easier in the instant aftermath, just because life necessitates it. Like he has to go back to college, he has to do the work, he has to kind of like pull himself together. But I think for him the healing journey would have come at a lot later point, and might have been like him breaking down like a year in when he realized that he never got the time to process the grief, whereas Sana really processes it in real time and she really takes her time. So I think just because of how the way that I imagine Ashish to be the kind of person, I feel like he would bury it and get involved in his new life, and it would hit him like a truck a couple of years later. And yeah, that's how I think he would process it.
That makes a lot of sense, and when I was thinking about this question also, this is one of those many things that came to my head, that maybe this is how Ashish will process grief, because I've also seen a lot of men, like in my close friends and in my family as well, that this is how they've processed grief. They don't break down at that instant because they have to be with their families, and they have to take care of everything else about the rituals and things that happen. But after a certain period of time, you can see that they're actually processing grief, and
Yeah,
that happens a lot later in life also, that
yeah,
the
no,
way you
for sure.
mentioned.
I completely agree, and that's how I would imagine he would deal with it as well.
That makes sense. Okay. Moving on to the next question. I've seen that the theme behind Fool Me Twice is second chance romance, and we see that happening. I love that part as well. Have you given second chances to people in your life? It's a personal question, but I just wanted to speak to you about it.
See, I don't believe that a single mistake defines a person kind of a person myself. Um, Maybe that's because I've made enough of my own mistakes to know that if people hadn't extended me the grace of giving me second chances, that I wouldn't have the same people in my life that I do right now. Um, and I don't think it's as easy as saying a second chance or a third chance. I think we are human beings, we mess up, we make messes, and we learn from them. And I think when it comes to giving second chances or third chances or fourth chances, I think what really matters to me is what the core of the person is. If the core of the person is something that I believe in, if I know that the core is good and these mistakes are all peripheral, I am the biggest second chance giver, because I truly think that human beings' capacity to change and reform themselves is intense. I think we are more malleable than we claim to be, or that like society perceives us to be. Of course, I mean, when things become different, when there's grave harm that's caused to you, like things are different there. But like, I think we need to offer each other a lot more grace when it comes to making mistakes. I am not a perfect human being at all. And I think with no I can't say it with a chip on my shoulder that I would not give second chances, because if that had been the case, then I would have lost a lot of people and I would have been a slave to the mistakes that I've made for the rest of my life, because I would have never gotten the forgiveness that I did. So I also extend people that grace. And I think, yeah, I find it tough to close chapters when I feel like they haven't been written well towards the end. So yes, I am a second chance kind of a person, and I think sometimes we deserve.
That's a very beautiful answer. But what about giving second chances to yourself?
I will give myself as many chances as I need. I think something that happens as you grow up and something that happens as you grow older, which I think in the years between ages 20 to 25, I think I see a real difference. And I think a lot of growing up happens in 20s. And the person that I was when I was 20 and the person that I am today when I'm 25 are two very different people. And I wouldn't be who I am today and feel genuine love and affection for who I am today if I hadn't given 21-year-old, 22-year-old me the chances to mess up, the chances to like screw things up and to come back and to kind of, try and be good again. And over the years, I've realized that people will come and go. The best people in my life will come and go, but I am here for myself for as long as I'm here. And I think that's a very sobering realization. I've kind of really fallen in love with the idea of like, I'm my own best friend. And I really like that. So I think I owe it to myself to give myself as many second chances as possible. I will never, ever claim to be or desire to be a perfect person. I don't think I have that kind of tenacity to be perfect. And I would rather stay here and keep making mistakes and keep learning from them than live in a facade where I think I'm this, higher being who can't mess up, who can't like have like problems or things that are wrong about her. So yeah, I mean, love myself and I will give myself as many chances as possible because I believe to my core that I'm good. And that extends to me as well. That same principle extends to me as well. So yeah, lots of second chances to me, as I have in the past, as I will keep giving to myself in the future.
That's amazing, and I hope that everybody gets to do that, because I've seen a lot of people find it very difficult to forgive themselves. They
Yeah.
keep forgiving other people for the mistakes they make in life, but when you particularly make a mistake in life, I was such a person like a few years back when I found it very difficult to forgive myself for the mistakes I did in life. But then at some point in time, you eventually realize that maybe it's better to forgive and move on, give yourself another chance to live life to the fullest instead of just staying stuck in the past and not exploring life.
Yeah, you can't rewrite the script that's already been written. All you can do is focus on the next chapter. So I think you always have the power to kind of, decide how you're going to feel about yourself today, despite the mistakes that you made before. And who would we be without our mistakes is my biggest learning. Like, I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't messed up in so many annoying ways before. So that's why I give myself that grace.
So did this help you in some way when you were writing about a second chance romance?
I generally am the kind of a person who I don't think in black and white about anything. I don't think of like romance, love, friendships, anything is black and white, mistakes is black and white. And my philosophy on love, fidelity, everything is very, very like, it's dynamic. It's very dynamic based on what kind of like a person am I talking to, what kind of situation are they in. So I think in general, I'm a very like, let's look at this from 1,000 different perspectives before we arrive at an answer kind of a situation. And that stems from my empathy, like because I am that way as a person as well. And definitely, I think empathy is something that you need to have in order to be able to write characters, because you need to empathize with the characters you don't like in that moment as well. There were so many moments I did not like Sana. I was like, I don't like you right now. Something terrible happened to you, but that doesn't justify you doing the things that you're doing right now, or feeling the way that you're feeling right now. But I have to have that empathy for her to know that she can't help it. And sometimes we can't, like, sometimes we're not consciously in charge of everything that we're saying and doing. Sometimes our emotions take over, and maybe that isn't right, but it's just the way that it is. So I think I am that way in my real life as well, and that really like bleeds into who I am as a writer. So certainly, like, just having that kind of perspective in my life has really helped in writing as well.
That's amazing. And I also noticed that Sana was flawed in a lot of ways, but doesn't. But I then realized that flawed is beautiful, because this is what enhances the character. That the character is flawed, complex in itself, but the character is making the wrong choices, but then they're slowly and steadily evolving in life. That's the character journey.
And isn't that all of us? I mean, who can't relate to that? So I'm glad that she gave you that feeling. That's all that I was intending with her.
That's awesome. And I also wanted to ask if Sana's character was difficult to write, because she very much resembles a teenage girl in love, trying to find balance in love and life, very emotionally involved with Ashish, with other people also. How difficult was it for you to write a complex character like hers?
Sana came very easy to me. I think it's also because I think I put a lot of my own feelings in the first book, which tends to happen. And I think it'll keep happening throughout all the books. I don't know if I'll ever detach myself completely from my characters. But I think she came easy because I don't know, it was cosmic in a way, but she came pretty easy to me. And I know that she was difficult in her own ways, but I think people around her were also difficult. And she wasn't the only one who was a complex and, difficult person to love. But at the end of the day, she was just a bubbly, happy go lucky girl. And that's all that I cared about. And I think because she had that big redeeming factor about her, she came easy to me. So it wasn't tough at all, actually.
Makes sense. And how similar is Sana to you? I mean, in real life.
So I went to a book club event recently where I was being interviewed by Nirav, who's the founder of Broke Bibliophiles, and he kept referring to Sana as me. So he's like, "Oh, you said that to Pranav." I was like, "Not me. It's not. I did not write this book about me." She doesn't resemble me in any way that you would think. I think only I would ever know how Sana resembles me or how any of the characters resemble me because I've placed such niche, nuanced parts of myself in these characters that I know, but it's very difficult to kind of like know from the outside in. So I would say like nothing about Sana resembles me, but everything about Sana resembles me. And there's no way that I can explain it to someone who doesn't live inside my head, which unfortunately is just me. So yeah, that's my convoluted answer to that question.
That's kind of politically correct. Any one instance in which, in a way, that Sana resembles you? One
Oh, she
example.
keeps getting scammed by auto walas because she's not confrontational at all. And that's me. I don't. So I know I'm being scammed. Like I know when they're charging me a little too much, and I'm just gonna let it happen because I don't have it in me to have that confrontation. And and she's very much like that as well. She's like, I'll keep getting scammed, and she promises herself that tomorrow I will not get scammed, which it'll keep happening to her because that's just who she is. That's very much me.
That's awesome. Okay, moving on to the side characters like Bani and Achal. Uh, so what happens, I've generally observed, is that there are books who do not delve deeper into their lives, but you have given them a character arc. You have tried to frame stories for them as well. We get to delve deeper into both Bani and Achal's life. So how difficult for you, or how easy was it for you to write about them?
I think I really so they never had these stories when I was initially thinking of the plot line. So everything about these people came to me while I was writing the story. And I realized that I had thought of these characters as they came to me in that moment. Like this is what they're doing in this moment. And it almost felt like my brain was kind of trying to understand why are they being this way in this moment. And the stories would then come magically. So in the story of like Anchal having a partner, whatever, like whatever happens at the campsite, it wasn't there initially. But I realized that the excitement with which she's trying to plan this trip and, why she's feeling so over the moon about it, there has to be some reason. So I think in it wasn't a conscious decision to give them kind of these stories that made them, relatable, but it was more like, oh, it's making sense why they're acting this way right now. And it was almost like working backwards from there. And eventually I came to have like such a sweet, like soft spot for all of these characters, like Anchal and Bani, especially. Like so many people come up to me, and the people who have a favorite character, it's almost always Bani. And it's so surprising to me that that's what they leave with when, she's clearly not the main character and she's not given that much space. But I think that really tells me that I did justice to the side characters. For people to leave with them as their favorites means that in some way that they weren't side characters. So yeah, that was, it wasn't tough. It wasn't like difficult. It just came to me as a part of the entire process. And I'm so glad that they got their own individual stories.
Absolutely. I mean, the ending also defines their characters. So
Yeah.
it was beautiful in the end when you read about them. Uh, the next thing that I want to ask you is about romance in general. So I see that you've read a lot of romance novels, and I'm sure that it would be tough to write romance because you see so many good books out there, so many amazing writers. So, as a writer, how do you make something old feel new, avoid cliches, and still keep readers hooked?
You do that by not thinking too much about it. Because if I start thinking about the volume of romance books out there, I will not be able to do this well because um, it's the market is inundated with romances, and I'm so glad. As a reader, I'm so glad. As a writer, I'm like, do I have anything new to say? But I think that's where the angle of grief came in for me. I realized that we're exploring love from many different angles, but like exploring love from the lens of death and loss is something that not a lot of romances are doing. So I think I try to find like a synergy between romance as like this thing that we'll always have, and some fundamental truths of life that I feel like romance novels are avoiding, and kind of like create a blend. So I think my next one, which I'm right now in the stages of like thinking about different ideas, they're also very similar. Like I want to tap into like this conversation that we're not having, and then bring in the cliches where we need them, because I think a balance is required. Like you should do something niche and you should do something new and novel, but at the same time cliches are cliches for a reason. They feel good to read, they're nice. So that's how I'm trying to do it. I also try not to think too much about what's out there. If you try thinking about the volume of things that are being produced on a daily, you will not be able to produce art. Because at the end of the day, it's just a blip in the universe. Like my book is just like, it's not even like a cell, it's like an atom in the entire observable universe. But it's it's my universe, so I'm happy producing it still. And if people like it, they like it, and if they don't, it still gave me a lot of joy writing it.
Absolutely. Which brings me to my next question. You just mentioned that, if people like it, they like it. If they don't, then you still enjoyed writing the book. So the book has been in the market for like a month, and you must have received mixed reviews, some good, some bad. How do you take negative reviews?
I take them with a pinch of salt, and I throw it back like a shot of vodka, and then I'm done. Basically, I've gotten a few. Some by people I really respect, and some that are obviously that feel like mean spirited. So the mean spirited ones I don't care about, because I know that those come from a place where critique isn't the priority, and the critique is more on me than the novel. But then I think the negative reviews that are critical about the work as a piece of work and a piece of art, I am obsessed with it. I've already gotten ideas of how I can better the next one. I feel like this is the first time in my life that I found something that I so desperately want to get better at every single day. So these reviews really help me. And I don't feel that way about any other thing in my life. Like this is the only thing where I'm like, I will get better. I'll get better every single day. So the ones that are really informative and are genuinely critical, and that give me something to take away with, I genuinely take them. And the ones that are just like, I didn't like this book, I'm like, hi, that's okay. Like even I don't like a lot of books, and there isn't always a grand reason behind it. So those I just let be, because I also have to give readers that permission to not like my book. I have disliked so many books, and it's not fair for me to expect everyone to like mine. But I take them well. They don't bother me unless they're mean spirited. Then I'm like, why do you have to be mean about it? But if they're genuinely coming from a place of like solid constructive criticism, I'm very happy to take reviews, and I'm very happy to work on them, because that's all that I want to do.
Any particular review that stuck with you?
Someone in the journalism industry, I think on Twitter, reviewed the book and kind of like talked about how it's a little too dramatic and kind of flows very like predictably, and made a few fair valid points. I'm forgetting now exactly what it was, but that was very interesting to me because he presented it in such a interesting way and in a thoughtful way. And I was like, okay, yeah, this sounds fair. Maybe I won't be able to correct that, because there is a certain twang and a certain style to my writing that I think I also want to be loyal to. But that's a fair review, and maybe I work on the next one. So that one, that definitely stayed with me, because it was kind and positive, but it was still very to the point, and it was critical, and I think it helped me grow as a writer.
That's amazing. And you're also working on your second novel, right?
That's a big claim to make. I am working on a bunch of things, but it's not like it's not defined yet. Like I am working on a bunch of ideas, but the second novel doesn't exist as a novel yet.
Okay. I was always assuming that, now that you're done with the first, you must be working on the second, because you've become like the talk of the town in a lot of ways. A lot of people are talking about your book. A lot of people are actually reading your book. It keeps coming on my explore page. So I thought that maybe you're just thinking about a second novel.
But I think I will reserve any comment on that till I'm sure.
Okay, that's fair. So, right. I think we're done with most part of this section. And before we move on to the next section, which is a rapid fire round, I would like to get some recommendations from you, because how can we live without recommendations from No Love?
Book recommendations?
Yes.
Okay, let me open up my reading list. And because I tend to forget things very, very easily. Okay. I keep a track of all the books that I've read. Okay, I love anything by Vari McFarlane. Just Last Night is a book that gives very similar vibes to my own book because it also deals with loss and grief, and I love that book. Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason is one of my holy grail Bible level kind of books. Like I reread that all the time. The Year of Magical Thinking, which is actually in the epigraph of my novel, a quote from The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion, is something that I'm obsessed with. Oh my God, the way that that book captures grief, I don't want to be able to capture that because that was actually written as a nonfiction and I don't want to do that. A very interesting love story, which I think defines like something that fights all the cliches and is not a typical love story, is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. Like really, really lovely love story. And a nice, cute romance that I read that I still think about all the time is Mrs. Nash's Ashes by Sarah Adler. It's a very nice road trip romance, which I think we don't read so many of. So those are some recommendations. But I read so much and like I can't possibly pick more.
And what about second chance romances? Any particular books that come to your mind?
I can't remember them as tropes. Happy Place, my favorite second chance romance. I love that.
Okay, awesome. Let's now move on to the next section. That is the rapid fire. You'll get like 10 seconds to answer each question.
I'm really bad at rapid fires, by the way. You were there at my book launch. You saw how poorly I did. But I'm going to try and be good at it for you.
Awesome. Okay. We'll try our best. The first question is, if you were to dedicate a song to Sana and Pranav and one to Sana and Ashish, what would they be?
To Sana and Pranav, it would be Tumse Hi from Jab We Met. And to Sana and Ashish would be, I don't know if you've heard it, but it's the song that goes like, I don't see what anyone can see in anyone else but you. It's a very cute song from a movie called Juno, which is about teen pregnancy. But I would recommend listening to that song. It's very cute.
Okay. If you were given a choice between Pranav and Ashish, who would you pick and why?
I'm not gonna answer that question because I keep answering that question and people keep getting mad. But I would pick Pranav.
Okay, me too.
Poor guy dies. It was so mean to him.
No, I think there are parts of Ashish I did not like in the book. I mean, his character.
I'm glad because that was intended as such. And he's not the perfect boyfriend that everyone is kind of like taking him away to be.
Exactly, which is why I would any day pick Pranav over him.
I'm glad.
Okay, cats or dogs?
Dogs, any day.
Cats are mean?
No, I love cats. I'm a big animal person, but dogs are like I like dogs more than humans, and I don't mean this in a meme way. I talk to dogs. Like I see dogs, I'm like, hi, what are you doing? And I'm not trying to be a meme. I feel a connection with them that I can't explain in human like language. So dogs.
Absolutely, I've seen dogs on your Instagram page as well.
I had a dog for 16 years. I can't explain, but like I have a cosmic relationship with dogs. Nothing is gonna beat them.
Okay, a date with flowers and chocolates or a date with books where the two of you read together?
The latter, obviously.
Have you been on a date like that?
Nope. Actually, I have. That's a lie. My boyfriend and I read together very often. We go on vacations and we read together. We have been to like the Lodi Gardens and have read together. He's just not that big of a reader. So it isn't his favorite thing to do. But yeah, I would love like a dedicated reading date.
Yeah. Okay, if your life was a Bollywood movie, which song would define your character?
Like me?
Yes.
Cutie Pie from what is that movie? Ae Dil Hai Mushkil.
Wow. I mean, now that you've spoken about it, I think it perfectly fits you.
It is very me. I love it.
Okay, your favorite debut author and your favorite female author?
Debut author. it's tough for me to figure out because I don't always know an author's backstory. My favorite female author is Meg Mason, who wrote Sorrow and Bliss. Bahri McFarlane. I've almost read everything that she's written. Emily Henry. And Ali Hazelwood.
Okay. Your favorite place to write?
A cute cafe which has books and good coffee.
So, do you like write in cafes more than you write at your place?
I wrote the entire book in a cafe. I don't like writing at home. I'm a observant person. I like seeing people. So I really like writing outside of I love editing when I'm home because that's a more like mental process, but I love writing when I'm outside.
Okay, makes sense. Is there a book you've lied about reading?
No, I'm very open about the fact that I haven't read some of the most like canonical books. I don't like let me think. I have. I've lied about reading Pride and Prejudice and I haven't read it. Oh no. And it's in my book as well. But I've read so many excerpts. I've seen so many adaptations that I feel like I've read it. So yeah.
Okay, got it. I think I've lied about reading God of Small Things.
Oh gosh, I haven't. I revealed that on my Instagram recently.
I really wanted to read that. I read her second book, which was Ministry of Utmost Happiness, but then I never got a chance to pick that book.
I think you should, even I should. I've been waiting on that for a long time.
Okay, when you start reading, I'll see it on Instagram and I'll start reading then.
Done.
Okay. Stupidest question you've been asked as an author?
I'm trying to think. It's not stupid, so I will clarify this. It's not stupid at all. But one question that feels bizarre to me every time is it based on a real story? I'm just like, no, it's really not. It's not stupid. Like, of course, I get why people would have that question, but like, yeah, that's the one that comes to mind.
And who's your fictional crush? Book boyfriends.
I can't think. Nobody, I think. Win from Happy Place, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. And what's your go-to method for overcoming writer's block?
Write. You have to write.
Does it work?
Yeah, it works. I don't know what writer's block means. I don't have it. I don't know. I just always have something to say. So I just write and like I get over it.
Okay, makes sense. An author you wish more people knew about?
Meg Mason. Love her.
Sorrow and Bliss. I saw that book, in a bookstore at Bari Sons, and I was like, I need to pick this up. There's been twice, I went to it twice, and then I did not pick it up. Now I'm going to pick it up.
You need to. I maybe you won't like it as much as I do, but the book like just like kind of captures something very innate about me, but I love it. It's one of those books that I've read it like 5 times over and over in the last 3 years, and it's just I can't. I don't know what she did with that, but yeah.
I will definitely get it now. Okay. 3 things you look for before picking a book to read.
Cover. The first page should be exciting, and shouldn't be too thick, or shouldn't be too thin either.
Okay. Do you also look at Goodreads rating?
I don't really care about that. Like if it's like a 3.2, then I'll be like, seems something is wrong. But anything above a 3.5, I give a chance to.
Okay. What's the weirdest research topic you've delved into for a book?
Just like the anatomy of roller coasters, like what are the different parts called and stuff like that, because there's a roller coaster scene in my book. I ended up not using a lot of that, but I was just so intrigued. I was just like researching what different parts are called, and there's like useless information that will live in my brain now for the rest of my life.
That's good, no? You can always use it in your next book.
Yeah, but like maybe 3-4 books later.
An engineer who works on a roller coaster, created one. Something fancy.
And I'm gonna cop that.
Plot twist or character development? Which do you prioritize?
Character development.
Okay. If you could write in any genre other than your current one, which is romance, what would it be?
I do want to write like general fiction, really desperately, like fiction that surrounds family, romance, mental health, and all of that. And I will at some point. I, I see myself writing equal parts here and there. So I think that like general fiction, which is still very much so about love and relationships, but like it isn't like just boy meets girl and they fall in love. A little more grit.
Got it. I think that also is one of the kind of books I like reading, because you get to read about everything else also, not only the boy and the girl.
Absolutely.
One such book that I remember is Karuna Isra Parikh's The Heart Asks Pleasure First.
Oh yeah,
That is such a beautiful book. I loved it. Especially the parents. Have you read it?
I wanted to read that.
Okay. The side characters are so beautiful. I mean, everything has been delved into such depth that when you read it, you will feel every character, not just the main characters.
I completely understand that. There's another book which is not technically a love story, but it's called Teen Couple Have Fun Outdoors. It's about a young couple whose sex tape gets released, something like that. And it's just about like a family dealing with the aftermath of that. And it's an Indian book and it's so good. Like I love the way that it's displayed, like shame and family trauma and all of that. It's like so good. So like something like that I would love to write.
I would love to read that book. I haven't heard about it.
Really good. I'll send you the details. It's really good.
Definitely. Okay. If you could write in, okay, I just asked that. Next question. Do you prefer to write beginnings, middles, or endings?
Middles.
Okay, that defines.
Feels very non-committal.
Okay, and do you like plan your chapters beforehand when you write it, or?
I mean, I've just written the one book. I didn't plan them at all. But once I'm halfway through writing it, I kind of break it down. That this happens here, this happens here. So like, and I keep changing. Like sometimes I will end a chapter before, and then take something to the next chapter. But I don't plan as such a lot.
Okay. What's the oddest place you found inspiration for a story?
A doctor's office. Not going to reveal why.
Okay, maybe we'll get to see that in your later books. If you could have a cameo appearance in Fool Me Twice, what role would you play?
I would, because I'm so old. I don't think there's any character that's my age in the book. I'd love to like play Professor Serene. I don't know. Hopefully, like maybe she's a young, cool, chill professor like that.
Okay, and the last question for this round is: what's the best piece of advice, writing advice you've ever received?
It's not the first draft that counts; it's the edit. I think a lot of writers tend to take their first drafts very hard on themselves and think that this is like crap. I'll never write a good piece again. But I think the real craft of a writer lies in the edit. So I wholeheartedly believe in that, and I think I'm a way better writer in the 10th edit of my novel than I am in the first draft. So that for sure.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think we've come to an end with this round. And with that, we've finally come to an end of this discussion. Oh my God, this was amazing, Nona. Thank you so much for being here, for talking to me. I thoroughly loved every part of this discussion. Your answers were so honest, so true. And I hope that this conversation makes people delve deeper into the lives of Sana and Ashish and Pranav, read about these characters in detail, and get to read your book, Fool Me Twice.
I'm so excited, and thank you so much for the lovely questions. So many of them made me think so much, and I'm going to be taking my time and thinking about them all day long now. But thank you so much for having me, and I'm so excited for your book club to read the book.
Thank you so much. I really hope we get to read it, and if not, then I'm going to pester them till they end up picking it up.
As one should. I will totally support that.
And thank you, fellow readers, for tuning into this conversation. If you haven't read Fool Me Twice yet, go get it at a bookstore near you. I'm sure you guys are going to love it. Till then, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Instagram. I'll add Nona's Insta handle also in the description below, but I'm sure you're already following her. And if you like this discussion, please give us a big fat thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next episode.